Joining me now to discuss former FBI Special Investigator Bill Daly and former Deputy Assistant Director for the FBI Counterterrorism Division, Turchie. Let me start with you, Bill. First of all, we got to give a shout out to law enforcement. This is a remarkable. It happened quickly. They've been in the eye of storm of a lot of public criticism. Everyone has to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Do you feel like this is over? That perhaps, I know that earlier there was talk of perhaps searching out or seeking more potential suspects.
Well, certainly we don't know if there are any people who either been complicit, knowingly or unknowingly, in this plot. The other thing, too, is that there could be other scenes that need to be investigated. So as much as we've seen some video of the van being taken away by the FBI for processing, it doesn't mean that his residence or maybe some other locations where you fabricated these devices don't contain materials that are still quite potentially harmful to individuals. So those are areas that need to be explored. So the investigation is by no means complete. It really is now knowing that we have the main perpetrator and perhaps the only perpetrator in custody and neutralized. Right.
And of course, we are all breathing a sigh of relief that the stock market came back at least 400 points. Terry, so where do we go from here? The sort of postmortem on all of this teaches us all valuable lessons. And I think one of the things a lot of folks come away with is sort of how easy this might be and how, could there be copycats?
Well, you can always have the possibility of copycats, and we certainly can see that here. But as we talked about the other day, it's easy for some people. It's not so easy for most of us. But they're going to learn a lot about this man. They'll learn a lot about where he learned to do this and if there was anybody else in the picture, as Bill just said. And they'll put together a timeline, and they'll literally be able to account for just about everything he did in the last few months or year or however long they take that back. In Unabomber, for example, the timeline for Theodore Kaczynski, once we knew who he was, went back for 18 years. And it's amazing how much you find out. The other thing they'll be able to do when they search some of the residents or the locations that they can come up with is they might find journals, or they might find notes, they might find a diary, they might find this man's own thoughts written out. And that's a frequent thing that happens with these kinds of people.
Yeah, one thing we see, whether it's this bill or some shooting incidents that have happened, even terror incidents, that there were red flags along the way. Already a lot has been made of this gentleman's criminal record. Mm-hmm. It's pretty extensive. It goes back a couple of decades. On the Florida side, a felony in '91, a felony in 2004. He had a drug count in 2004, a third-degree felony. This is in 2013, just in Florida. In the New York Times, they released some other records. 2014, felony battery charges. He filed for bankruptcy in 2012. He had nothing, not even furniture. I mean, seemed like a loner with a chip on his shoulder, certainly a public nuisance and a public threat for a long time.
Yeah, Charles, you're exactly right. I work today with some of the people formerly from our old agency who headed up the behavioral analysis teams, and they call it leakage, and they say over a period of time, and in many of these cases, as you well pointed out, whether it's shootings or other events, is that there were some indications. Now, perhaps those breadcrumbs weren't firm enough or bright enough or shiny enough to draw people's attention to, but later on, when you thread them together, you start to put together this composite picture. I'd also like to say, too, is that sometimes we're also looking for an answer. We always like to put our own, a cap of rationality on these things and say he did it because of this or some ideology. It's very difficult. We'll know more as time goes along, but sometimes it's a very mixed up kind of blender effect of what people are thinking, what prompts them to do things. We think it's in one line, but really it's an amalgam of a number of things that drive these people to commit these horrendous acts.
Yeah, we can't apply rational thought to someone who's irrational all the time anyway. Terry, another thing, 2002 public records showed that Sayoc was arrested on charges of making bomb threats. So maybe he did have some specific skills here.
Absolutely, and they may have come up with information about those threats. He may have sent a letter or something to somebody. That might have been one of the ways they were eventually able to find him. So, public tips may have come into play as well, and we'll find out more about his skills and who showed him what to do and how to do it, or how he learned it as the next few days go on. But I think one other thing to be concerned about now is just to make sure that we have to hope they find the place where these bombs were actually assembled, because we're feeling pretty good, and I think they'll keep feeling good, but if they exhaust all the normal means to account for this person's time and who he was with in the last few days, last few months, but they can't find where he made these bombs, then that will kind of resurrect that worry about, is there anybody else involved,
Right.
or where are these things?